Rocket Racoon has quickly cemented himself from being a throw pick to being one of the strongest characters in the entire meta, with one of the highest win rates across all characters, even in the highest ranks of play. That's why in this video, we're going to break down everything you need to know about Rocket and give you advanced tips and tricks along the way so that you can dominate ladder with this character. To help us along, we recruited Coach Cuffy, a consistent Eternity/Top 500 Rocket Racoon player that also coaches a Tier 1 Overwatch Pro team and is coaching an up-and-coming competitive pro team for Rivals as well. Now, both of us are actually coaches for the Marvel Rivals Academy, so if you want to get better, check that out in the links down below, and let's get into the video. Now, Rocket's primary is called BOMBARD mode, and it's going to do 16 damage per bullet, but it's going to go down to 40% at 20 meters. And something that's interesting is that BOMBARD mode actually does a crazy amount of damage without even hitting headshots when you're close enough, and a lot of Rockets can use this to confirm kills on certain characters that can't fight back that easily, like even Moon Knights, for example, or poking behind your front line. You can do a crazy amount of damage. Now, it's a bit unclear about how much you should be shooting and when, so I asked Cuffy exactly what you should be doing with this primary.
I think naturally, once you get good at the game, there will be a little bit of variation. Players will start to learn how they identify as like a Rocket player. I know a lot of Rocket players do shoot from afar. I like to shoot as much as possible. I like to mix up a lot of shooting, but I also do hear the claims when people say that if you let go of right click, then the team drops, the team dies. I find the most value personally from taking those isolations, shooting my gun, maybe even burning the front line. A lot of the time that I choose the left click option, a lot of the time that I'm shooting opponents, it's actually quite close range, but I do look to shoot as often as possible.
Right. Adding more team pressure, making sure that you're getting more just than heal-based value. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. Now, Rocket's alternate fire is called Repair Mode, and this is going to do 70 heals to an ally per second and 30 heals per second to yourself. And in combination with this really small hitbox and that self-heal, he can be extremely elusive, especially when you take his mobility into account. Now, one of the things I was curious about, though, is when do you choose to heal bot a target versus not? And are you mainly healing tanks or DPS? And this is what Cuffy had to say.
I think a lot of people view Rocket as an AFK character, and in many ways, I wouldn't say that that's wrong. It gives you a lot of time to actually think about stuff like that. So I do think that things like the matchup, like understanding who's on your team, who's most vulnerable, who's on the enemy team, how much damage you can gauge pretty quickly, how much damage your tanks are taking and stuff like that.
Right.
There will be certain games where your stats drastically differ to other games, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Frontline taking too much damage, you do recognize when you don't really have those windows to deal as much damage yourself, right? That makes a lot of sense, yeah. When it comes to healing, so like, are you primarily healing the tanks? Are you primarily healing the DPS? Are you doing a combination of both? And also, like, as an extra question to that, are you taking like aggressive off angles with your DPS, or are you primarily just going to play main and help your team main?
It's actually quite interesting that you say that, because it is a bit of both. A lot of the team play is playing amongst your team, healing up your team. But I do think that there definitely is space to find those isolations with like a damaged teammate of your own and assist on that off angle. I will say that the most important thing is think about how his heals works. Just think about the area of effect that it has. You don't need to directly shoot your teammates to heal them. I like to imagine a straight line going through all my team. And if there's like an even amount of people either side of that straight line, I know I'm healing the most amount of people possible in that given moment, if that makes sense.
Right.
I just try and make sure the orbs are hitting as many people as possible.
Now, we do got to talk about Rocket's movement and specifically his jetpack dash. So he's going to be able to go 10 meters with his dash, and it's going to have 2 charges, each taking 6 seconds to recharge. Jetpack dash is an incredibly powerful ability that allows you to get away basically anything, and I would say generally you want to have at least 1 charge so that you're not caught out and killed by any diver, but as long as you do, Whether it's an ultimate or a dive, it's incredibly hard to kill you, and it's one of the many reasons why rockets have so little deaths. Now, your second movement ability is called Wild Crawl, and this is a passive ability that you can just trigger anytime, and you go 10 meters per second while you're crawling on the wall, and that's really freaking fast. And then last up is your movement passive Flying Ace that allows you to float down from a very high height, and it also can allow you to run up a wall, jump off that wall, and float down while you're healing and doing some amount of poke damage. Now, my main question to Cuffy was, what were the biggest mistakes that people are making with this movement package, and how are they not utilizing it to its full potential?
It's the number one thing that, like, it's very obvious who the rocket players are and who the rocket fillers are, you know?
Right.
I think movement is the number one important thing that you should learn. If you're comfortable on the walls, like it goes with any movement based character, right? If you're comfortable on the walls, if you're comfortable living, you're gonna stay alive. And if you stay alive, you're able to do more in the fight, whether that's damage, whether that's heals. Your life is always gonna be a priority, and I do think that you should be grinding those mechanics more than anything. Because that's what makes you annoying. That's what makes you look good when you're playing the game. It just opens up so many different possibilities if you're good at the movement, essentially. And I think you should position yourself as such. Like, I see a lot of players standing in the middle of point and just jumping around, and it's like, why don't you use your jetpack? Why don't you set up by a wall? You know, people don't even set up by a wall, by walls at all sometimes, and I think that's crazy, because it's like, that's the only way that you live. That's the only way that you get out. You're faster on the walls than you are on the ground.
Right. That makes sense. They're not even thinking about how to use this mobility or setting up for it or anything like that. It makes a lot of sense. Now, the next ability is a very important one. BRB is Rocket's bread and butter. It's one of the most powerful abilities in the entire game, and this is what it does. So first off, it's going to deploy an item every 3 seconds. This is either going to be a vertical jump that launches you way in the air, or it's going to be 25 HP from armor that someone can grab one time. You want to throw this out in the pre-spawn so that your teammates can grab it, and then you can bring back your BRB, and you'll have it back before you get into a fight, but your teammates get to conserve all of the items they grabbed. And some of these can be really, really strong. Like the vertical from the mobility can be used to get your Black Panther out of combat, or it could even be used on like a Wolverine when he grabs a tank. Then he can use that to fly even further into your team. So it's incredibly powerful on a lot of mobility heavy characters, giving them a second chance or a way to combo abilities. And the extra armor is just good for everybody. No matter what, it's just great to have a little bit of extra health. They can be a little bit more aggressive at the beginning of a fight. And it's going to have a 300-second duration, so it's going to be up for a very long time. And it's on a 45-second cooldown, but when you reclaim it, it's going to be put on a cooldown based on HP. So if it gets fully destroyed, it's going to be 45 seconds. But if it doesn't take as much damage, it will actually be less. So you want to make sure that if you see anyone going towards it or anyone actively shooting it, you pull it back as quickly as possible. And then if it's on full HP and you take it back, it's only a 5-second cooldown. So that's something that's important. If you put it in a position that enemies are routing to, like a Panther or whatever is going that direction, then you know that you need to pull it back, because he will find it and he will kill it. And as long as you get it back to you, then you'll be able to throw it out again, and you don't have to wait that full 45 seconds, which means that the fight is already going to start and end before you're going to get the value from it. So that's very important. Now, one of the things I asked Cuffy is, when should you be holding BRB, or when should you be throwing it? Because a lot of rockets do not just throw it pre-fight. How do you set it up, and where do you set it up?
This is interesting because it took up a large percentage of the guide that I'm making on Rocket. Like, it's a very versatile ability. I say primarily know your spots. I have go-to spots on every single map, but I definitely have multiple placements. Once you get better at using the BRB ability, you'll understand when it's time to call it back, because you need to call it back sometimes and endure that 5-second cooldown, because you don't want it to be destroyed and endure a 45-second cooldown.
Right.
So having multiple spots is completely fine. Sometimes you'll see me throwing it in the middle of a fight, just like behind me. But that's often when I misplay beforehand. Ideally, you don't want to be popping it in the mid fight. Sometimes you might try and attempt to throw it if you're safe, but you can see your teammate is dying. You might try and reactively resurrect someone, and I think that's fine. But in the mid fight, it's not consistent at all. You should pretty much have an idea of the spots that you know are reliable. You'll learn that pretty quickly though.
Right, right. And so I'm guessing one of the things that Rockets need to do is also like always monitor their BRB or kind of know, because you said pull it back, right? And I think low rank Rockets almost never pull back their BRB. They just always let it get destroyed. They know they're not watching out for it, right?
I mean, yeah, like to me that doesn't really make sense because the map progresses regardless of if it's like a payload map or like a hybrid map. I guess on like King of the Hill, I guess it's a bit more like symmetrical. But the map changes all the time. It's altering. The more the enemy team pushes up, the less space you have, which means the resurrect should also be getting pushed back the same way our team is getting pushed back, if that makes sense.
That makes, yeah, gotcha. So you're constantly reevaluating positioning of both teams. Is the spot a reasonable spot? Should I put it in another spot? Do I have the time to? Now, next is his ultimate Amplifier, an ultimate that a lot of people are completely disregarding. They don't like Amplifier. They would rather have a defensive ult. But what exactly does Amplifier even do, and how do you get the most amount of value with it? So first off, it's a 20-meter radius, and it's going to do 40% damage buff to everyone that's within that radius, and it's going to last for 12 seconds. So it's a really long-lasting ultimate as well. And the questions that I mainly asked Cuffy was, when is the best time to use an amplifier? And also, how do you get consistent value from an amplifier? Because according to him, a lot of people are messing it up, and it's costing them games.
Break it down into 3 different ways you can use the amplifier, right? The first is to force an ult.
Right.
Now, this is something that people say you cannot do, but I do it all the time. The primary way that I look to use my amplifier is to force out an enemy support ult. And the reason why I do this is because we know support ults are extremely strong right now, and Rocket does not have the support ult. So you need to make sure that you're getting that value. The enemy team are responding to you the same way that they would respond to any other hero. I've picked up on something just based on how Overwatch played out back in the day with Orissa's old bongo, Orissa's old ult.
Right.
The way we would time it, the way I would coach it for my teams was, if an enemy steps past the choke, if they're at the point of no return where they don't have the speed because it's not a character like Lucio and Storm, you know, is permabanned, you know?
Right.
If they step through a choke and they can no longer turn around and walk back through that choke, that is the exact moment where you press the bongo. That's when you press your ult. It secures kills very consistently, especially if you're calming it, you know, if you're counting it down, if you're explaining the plan to your teammates. But even then, people will naturally react to the damage boost. People, as bad as your teammates are,
right,
they aren't stupid. They're going to react. So the first way is to force an enemy ult. The second way, I would say, is to respond to an enemy support ult. So waiting it out. Another thing that people don't do is wait out enemy support ults. For some reason, people will try and kill through the enemy support ults with damage ults. But the whole point of a support ult is to negate that value, right?
Right.
So if you just wait an extra 3 or 4 seconds, so even if it's the end of your damage boosting ult, so if you have like the last 3 or 4 seconds whilst the enemy support ult is down, you will get a lot of value from that. And then the third way is very quick. It's just understanding who you can combo with to kill through support ults. So you can kill through support ults with like a Doctor Strange full charge, you know, damage amplifier quite consistently.
Right.
You can kill through support ults with Star-Lord amplifier very consistently. You'd be quite surprised how many options you kind of have with it.
Right, yeah. I know from personal experience, I love doing Namor and Rocket with my Rocket duo. Feels very satisfying to just... Now, I did want to go over the team-ups very quickly. First off is Old Friends. I was skeptical about its usability, but here's what Cuffy had to say.
There's no harm in doing it, I feel. It's not like a game-changing ultimate. Definitely don't play Rocket because we have a Groot, you know? It's not game-changing like that or anything like that. But I do definitely think that Groots survive a lot more if you're on their back. So what I would do is, if I see my Groot slightly out of position and he's dropped to half health, I might try and go on his back to see if I can get him out of the situation. But if he dies, I'm always ready to boost straight back out. or I'm ready to boost straight back out and let him die if I know there's no point in trying to keep him up.
Right, gotcha. Now, next up is the second team up, Ammo Invention. And this one's going to give Bucky rapid fire and unlimited ammo, and it's going to give Punisher the same thing, but Punisher is going to be able to burst a lot more because of just how much volume of ammo he can get out. Now, what I really asked Cuffy is what's the difference between both of the team ups, between both characters? How strong is it, and when is the best time to use it?
So, is it a good power-up? Yeah, I would say it's a good power-up. I wouldn't say that it's the strongest or anything, but it's definitely good. Like, I appreciate a Punisher or a Winter Soldier pick just because the power-up is nice, but I don't think that they're must picks with Rocket, I will say. Best time to use this, just to increase the uptime. I actually think that the timing for Punisher and Winter Soldier are slightly different. I think when Bucky or Winter Soldier is setting up for a hook, I think it's a very nice way of securing that hook kill. Whereas with Punisher is just pressure. They're two different characters. Punisher, I like throwing the unlimited ammo the second his turret drops, because it's like having a second turret, you know? But in general, I think a lot of damage players understand and know when it feels nice for them. So a lot of the time, if I hear it being called in chat, I'll just listen to them blindly, almost, you know?
Gotcha. Now, I actually further broke down some tips and tricks with Cuffy, some questions that we had, and some things that we needed him to give us clarity on to become that next level Rocket player. The first one was about Rocket's place in the meta. What about his kit actually makes him so strong, and why does he have such a high win rate when many other supports that people deem are strong don't even have close to as good of a win rate as Rocket does?
I think that people are completely misunderstanding the meta of triple support. I think that people believe that the answer to triple support is to match triple support, but that is just playing their game. You don't have to play their game. I think Rocket players understand the meta more than the average player, if that makes sense, because every single one of us think our ult is good, you know?
Right.
How is it that every single one of us think that our ult is good and that it's strong into the meta, but everyone that doesn't play the character thinks it's bad? I wouldn't say it's one of the strongest support ults, because support ults are very, very strong, but his ult is not bad by any means. It's definitely the resurrect, the movement, the small hitbox. I think those things mean that he can stay in fights for extremely long and prolong fights for extremely long, regardless of the fact that he has a support ult at his disposal, you know? He doesn't need that.
Makes sense. I think my theory anyways, I wonder if you agree, is that Rocket prevents a lot of fights from being lost just in general, but you don't feel those as much as you feel like a defensive ultimate. Like when they're popping a Psylocke ult into you and you pop a defensive ultimate, you feel that. But when your tank gets picked and gets resurrected, you would have lost that fight, but you don't feel it. You don't feel that you would have lost that fight, but you would have. You would have definitely lost that fight. But BRB saved you. It bailed you out. In the same way that the defensive will bail you out. It just doesn't. You just don't feel it as much, but the win rate reflects it.
It's honestly crazy because it's like that in all regards. Sometimes I see my Magneto players definitely not charge up their ult enough for it to get a kill. It kills 2. Everyone's like, oh, insane ult mag, and I'm thinking that was literally because I pressed my ult. Like, he would have actually thrown the fight. But yeah.
The next big question is about Rocket's optimal team composition. How do you build it? What characters are in it? Should Rocket be played with 2 or 3 supports? And what are the best synergies overall in a comp?
It is quite interesting that you say that, because I know what it feels good. Like, there's no logic behind what I'm gonna say realistically, but I think it feels so good with an Invisible Woman. I don't know what it is about that, but Invisible Woman Rocket for me has like a very high win rate. I should look into that. But in general, I don't think Rocket needs to be played in triple support, but he is very good in triple support. I think having the support ults around the Rocket makes me feel a lot safer, because there is a lot of pressure on Rocket players getting their ults correct. Just because I'm saying that the ults good in this current meta doesn't mean that it's not extremely difficult to get value from the ults if you don't know what you're doing, if that makes sense. Just like anyone though, you could say that for Bucky, very good ult, but you can still have a bad ult, you know?
Does require the proper setups, the proper timing.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. Versus some of the support ults, Cloak and Dagger ult, it's not really that bad of a time to use it if you use it like to kick off a fight or in response. It's not like it's going to directly punish you as nearly as much. That makes sense. And then what about like DPS do you like to play with? Like, how do you feel about playing Rocket with divers, flyers? What can Rocket enable? Can they like enable like a really aggressive dive composition, perhaps hypermobility, or what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Rocket is versatile. I will say the damage picks matter a lot less than the support picks. I will say Rocket is very susceptible to low heal comps. Is quite bad with low healers. Like I don't like Rocket Mantis, for example. But I think Rocket is very good with Punisher, very good with Bucky, obviously, for power-ups, but very good with Storm, even. He can heal flyers, he can heal flankers, very good with Psylocke, you know? We have combos in the neutral. Shout out to Wolverine as well. Have you seen the tech with the jump pack?
Yeah,
The
good,
Wolverine jump pack tech?
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. It's very, very good. If you know who should take certain things and you call those things and you give them the resources, very, very helpful. The jump packs are very good into certain matchups as well. Give them to your other support that maybe lacks a bit of survivability, and all of a sudden they're more survivable to things like Black Panther, for example. You know, that jump could be enough time for me to turn around and actually force them out.
Yeah, I actually, when I'm Black Panther, I use the jump as like, it's almost like a free get out of the fight. Like that's literally what you get to use it for. I'll see if I can find it and put it in this video. But I actually saw on TikTok, someone created like an upside down ramp, like on the ceiling. Like, and then they grew rocket jumped and flew. Like it literally launched them across, and they ulted. It was like crazy. It looked crazy.
Huge. I saw it.
Yeah. Just some crazy innovation with Rocket. I also seen like some nuts stuff with like a strange portal and a Wanda like flying through it at like Mach speed. Yeah. Just some insane stuff. Now the next core question that I had is about what separates a good rocket from a great rocket. How do you get a reasonable rocket that's doing some things and getting value? And what is the difference there between a rocket that is hard carrying games and able to climb all the way to eternity and beyond?
It's damage output, not dying first. So damage output is very obvious when a rocket is good, you know. Like I don't know if you've ever seen this happen, but like if you're ending a game and you think, oh, this guy's been on rocket the entire game and he has 11,000 damage, 30,000 healing, that's like insane, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just about the value that you get, but I think you you can still get high damage numbers, but it is just the way that you're playing. To an extent, final blows as well is another thing that tells me if I can see a rocket in a kill feed, if I can see that they're actually securing kills, that tells me a lot more about how they're actually playing. Because like I said, I'm very much a rocket that likes contesting flank routes. I have my characters that I know that I kill consistently. I know my characters that I can, you know, pressure out on the front line. Like I love playing into Groots. I love diving Moon Knights. I think close to 90% of the gunfights I have with Moon Knight I will win, you know. And I'll be extremely aggressive on that. This is another crazy one. Punisher when he's ulting, I win that gunfight. I 100% win that.
It's really hard for him to hit you.
Yeah, I'm being dead serious. It's like you'll pick up on stuff like that, and over the course of a game, like you will, even Mag. I love Mag, Strange, all of that stuff that just can't shoot me back or doesn't have like a super high, you know. I have to int to get hit that many times in a row by that character, and all I have to do is aim in a straight line, not even hit the head, you know, and kill them within the first clip. So
The last thing I wanted to talk about is what are Rocket's worst matchups? What are the most problematic characters and the things that you really have a really frustrating time dealing with, or things that you have a good time dealing with? There are also some additional insights from Cuffy that I learned a lot from. This is what he had to say.
I really don't like the skinny hitbox characters. I don't know if that's just a me thing, personal preference, but like, if I'm fighting Dagger, for example, I'm sure there's other examples, but Dagger is like an obvious one for me. Like a lot of the time, it's like not that consistent before they, go to cloak, blind me, force me out, and I die. If they are on cloak from the get-go, I could probably kill them because the hitbox is bigger or more reliable, let's say. But again, I'm sure once my mechanics, I'll get better, that will be a much more consistent gunfight for me.
Right.
But that's just a personal preference. But the more insightful answer to that is burst damage characters. Hawkeye is a really, really bad one for me, but not for me. It's because it's too unpredictable how often he can trigger my res, and I really, really hate it. So characters that can just take a character out of the fight, like Hawkeye, I don't even bother playing Rocket into them anymore because it completely destroys my res advantage. Because especially when they're consistently killing one or two like that every single fight, there's just no point in having a res if I'm gonna start the fight with the res down anyway, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And you're not able to really utilize your mobility to help anything. At least when dive characters are after you or chasing you or wasting their time on you, you're getting value from that versus not really getting any value from there. Okay, so that's all my questions. Is there any additional insights that you wanted to give about Rocket, tips, generally for people that are looking to pick up Rocket, or warnings for people that want to pick up Rocket, anything like that, if you have anything?
Yeah, a couple things. You have to get value from thought, because like I said, it is very, very easy to just autopilot and heal. If you take that time that you do actually have when you're unpressured to think about how you can get the most possible value, you're gonna win a lot more games. I didn't even mention this. I believe it's 65% win rate right now in Celestial after 150 games, which is kind of crazy to maintain, if that makes sense. Right. When picking up Rocket, it's very easy to think that he's a low damage character. From max range, a body shot only does 6 damage, but his damage numbers significantly drop after a very short range. So actually, if you stand very, very close to the target, you can kill everything in the game within the first clip. Or just body shots, not even headshots, you know what I mean?
Right.
And a lot of people think about Rocket's damage as spam, when really it's not about that. A lot of the time it's large periods of time where you're healing and large periods of time where you're damaging and not healing at all.
Gotcha.
But a lot of people mistake that, but yes.
Makes sense. And then they're like, hey, I'm doing damage from across the map, and none of it's going to be impactful.
It's never impactful.
Versus, like you said, if you challenge the Moon Knight, where Moon Knight doesn't really have a lot of dueling capabilities, and you kill that Moon Knight, that is like an actual game-changing pick that you can generate pretty easily on Rocket. Makes sense.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I think that is everything. I'm gonna okay, yeah, my last question is, where can people find you? Where do people find your stream? Where do people find you online?
Most people watch my TikToks, just Coach Cuffy on TikTok. My YouTube is also Coach Cuffy, and my Twitch is Cuffy APG at the moment. So yeah.
Gotcha. Nice. Well, thanks, Cuffy. Now, I actually learned a lot doing this with Cuffy, and I highly recommend you check him streaming and his YouTube. The links will be in the description down below. Special thanks to him for helping me with this video. And thank you so much for coming by. I really hoped you learned something. Smash that like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and check out the academy down below if you want to get better. Me, Coach Cuffy, and so many other good coaches are there that will help you improve. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.